Hi there, this is Jenny with Boss Moves, and I'm introducing Melisa. Melisa, give us your name and uh, I guess you don't really have a job title right now, but you're all the things. Go ahead.
I am all the things. Melisa Lewis, thanks for having me. I would say my last official role was director of operations, and I still connect with that operations job title because I feel like it's one of those wear a lot of hats, step in where you need to type of positions. And that's definitely not only what I do professionally, but also personally. I'm very much an operations person.
Yes, I think it's good to hold that title. Life operations, director of
Yeah.
operations of all things. So, just a little background. Melissa is a former employee consultant of Power 3 Solutions, and she basically ran the ins and outs of my company for a number of years. And now she's on a new journey of self discovery of where she really wants to go. She needed a change from industry and maybe a change of purpose. And I think there's sort of points in your life where you're just trying to get money in the door, and points in your life where you're looking for purpose, and points in your life where you're looking for opportunity to go up in your career, the ladder. So Melissa's sort of been there and done it all. I'm going to start with some what I'm going to call rapid fire questions, and we'll kind of do that, and then we'll get into more of a discussion. So, first thing is, did you go to college?
Yes.
What is your degree in?
I have a master's degree in human resources.
Okay, and what percentage of your career would you say is really directly doing HR?
Now that I'm not in HR, I actually wonder how much of my job title under human resources was actually human resources and not people operations. So I would probably say maybe 30% of my career, and it was probably earlier in my career, I was in a traditional human resource role.
But now, as you're figuring yourself out, you don't see yourself pursuing human resources as a direct path.
No, no.
Okay. So, and this is something we see commonly. Degree field informs you, but doesn't necessarily direct you in the path. And I think a lot of people can relate to that. Okay, so favorite job ever, and it could be the silliest job, it could be the shortest job, the longest job, whatever it is.
I would say my very first job ever, even though I did the guy who owned the company was kind of creepy. But I used to work for a 1 hour photo. They don't even have them anymore. But it was really creative. I had to look at every single picture, which got very interesting sometimes, to help develop pictures for people in an hour. And it felt kind of artistic and creative. And yeah, it was stressful here and there, but for the most part, I really enjoyed working with the machine and things like that.
That's interesting. I didn't even know you did that. So that's really cool. Worst job ever, and why?
Um, Worst job ever. Gosh, I think I don't know that I have one single worst job, but I've had really horrible experiences at jobs that really shaped me, and I don't regret having them. I worked, this is also when I was younger. I worked at Springfield Mental Hospital because I thought I wanted to go into psychology. And by the time I signed up for the program, because I was a little late with everything, I got placed in a pretty aggressive ward, and I was chased a lot, and it it was wild. It was wild. And now looking back, I was 18 years old, and I had to like help shower and bathe these women with mental health significant mental health issues. And I had no experience in any type of care in that way, so it was pretty traumatizing in some ways, but I'm really grateful for that experience.
Okay. Worst boss.
I don't want to name anyone. But a few positions ago, I had a boss come in, and she was taking over, not taking over, so a newly created position. So previous to her, I had a boss who was always let me know everything going on. We were very collaborative. I felt like I really had my pulse on the company. And then someone came in above her and completely shut both of us out. We had no idea what was going on with the company. People would ask me questions. I felt completely clueless, like I couldn't do my job. And eventually I was laid off from that position because we lost some funding. And, looking back, I really think it was a blessing because I took some time off to be with my kids. And then I started more into the operations position after that.
Cool. What about, have you ever been fired?
I've never been fired with cause. I was laid off in that last position, but no, I've definitely daydreamed about reasons why somebody should fire me because I'm so angry and I want to flip everybody off on my way out. But I would never do that.
I've kind of done that. So let's switch over to favorite job. Wait, we already did that. Favorite boss and why?
I'll name her Lee Hannon. We're still good friends today. She is just a wonderful person in general. She has since gotten out of HR also. She owns Charcuterie, which is a really fabulous charcuterie brand where she got very creative and she builds these. I mean, it's art. It's really art. But I felt our friendship grew as we worked together because I really trusted her. And I think trust in a boss situation is really, really important. And it's earned. It's not something that you get right away.
Mm-hmm. So what is the hardest lesson that you've learned?
I have learned that when you are not the boss, you have to do what the boss says. And sometimes that can be really hard. You can put a lot of time and energy into something and have it completely rejected and have to either start over, or sometimes you lose connection with the project because you were, going in one direction, they want to take it in another. So, they kind of leave you out. And that's really difficult for me to give up control over something that I put a lot of time into. Yeah.
Melisa's the quintessential camp director, as she once told me.
I am the camp director.
And she is. She's that person that's just, kind of knows her path and wants to pursue it. And so it's cool. So, and I've got one more sort of rapid fire question and then we'll have more conversation. Biggest inspirational moment in your career?
I feel like you should have given these ahead of time. I think
he's a planner too.
I am a planner. I think there was a point in time recently. So I recently listened to a podcast with Jane Fonda, and I don't know if everyone knows who Jane Fonda is. She talks about the different acts, like the 3 acts of life, right? Your first 30 years, your middle 30 years, your final 30 years. And how when she's in her final act now. And she says, you don't want to have any regrets when you're in your final act. And that's the way she's living now. She's 85 years old. And I thought to myself, I'm in the very middle of my middle act right now. And I probably have another 15 years. Oh my gosh, 15 or so plus years ahead of me of, actively working before retirement. And understanding what other people are doing, the job satisfaction that they have, I want to find that also. So I'm sorry, I'm very long-winded sometimes. I had gone around the pool, a community pool that I go to with a bunch of families, and, a lot of us moms kind of group together and share information as we do. And I kept asking people, what's your job satisfaction? What's your job satisfaction? I was just surveying as many people who as I could talk to, because I also like to collect information. And so many of them were telling me, oh, 80%, 85, 90, 100%. And then there was the other extreme. Very few people said like less than 10%. Well, I want to be that higher percent, which is why I kind of took a leap and left my last position.
Right. And I think, it's, and this is where we can kind of really discuss the where you are now thing. And, my hope is that through your journey, people are learning and discovering things about themselves too. And I think one of the reasons I was very interested in inviting you on this is you're kind of at a sort of what I would describe as a mature stage of your career where you're really taking a step back to say, really, what do I want to be when I grow up? And I think I asked that question to myself. We've had real conversations about that. And I think that it's actually really a good question to be asking throughout your entire career. Because, like I said, you fall into jobs or you experiment with jobs. You had your psych ward job, and that was, a great learning of what you don't want to do. And I think most of what we spend our time doing is figuring out what we don't want to do. And when we get to the thing we want to do, there's other factors that can influence if that's even enjoyable. If your favorite thing is, painting portraits, but you have, 10-hour days demanding and a freezing cold office and a boss who's a jerk, you might be like, gosh, I'm not sure I want to paint portraits. And you might go somewhere else and do something you hate doing and enjoy it because you love who you work with. There's so many different factors. The biggest, thing, and I want to get into your journey and have you talk about it, but the biggest sort of thing I want to hear about is why you're exploring the things you are and what you think you want to do to lead you to the path of what's next for you. Like, what things are you applying? So I'm going to let you have the floor and just tell me about it and where you're at, what you've done, and what you think it'll bring you.
Sure. I am a big proponent of talking to people and asking for help, which was not necessarily the way I was brought up, but I think it's because of the generation that I was. There wasn't a lot of information out there about mental health. And, the first time I had an anxiety attack in college, it wasn't like, oh, this is anxiety, I'm going to be okay. I was like, I'm dying. Something is terribly wrong with me. So there are a lot of things that shape us. And I think our generation, the Gen Xers, the middle children, so to speak, of the generations. Did you know there's more millennials alive right now than boomers?
I did not know that shift had occurred, but
yeah, and they don't even talk about Gen Xers because we're like this little blip on the grunge radar.
We're meaner though. We are definitely meaner.
Yeah, well, we have to be. We're the middle children. Anyway, I started out thinking I wanted to go into psychology, which is why I worked at Springfield. And I did learn very quickly that clinical psychology was not something I wanted to do. I wanted to help people, but I felt like it's really thankless work when you're helping people that may not want to be helped, or believe that they need it. So I changed majors to business, and that's when I kind of fell into human resources, because my thought process was I want to help people within an organization. I want to help them, be the best that they can be, and bring people together. I'm such a people gatherer. And for quite a while, I had those feelings, and it was great. But there's a lot more that happens with human resources. You have to fire people, and that's kind of stinks. There might be people listening to this that I've had to let go, and I deeply regret 95% of the people I have to let go, even if it's warranted, because I know what it's like to not have an income, and that's really tough. And I really hated that part of it. And then you have the other side, like, benefits and things like that. And I don't know, I just kind of found that to be heavily administrative, and not much creativity in that. So I moved into operations with Power 3, and that was great because I love having a team. It was the first time I could really help grow a team and develop a team and work with people, and I miss them every day. I really miss the people that I worked with, the people I brought on board. Sometimes we made some questionable hires, as we know. um,
People
it always,
misrepresent themselves sometimes, and you
yeah,
have to
it
figure it out.
happens. It happens. But I miss having a team. I miss feeling needed. And now that I haven't, worked, more regularly in that role since I think about July, I've kind of gone full circle in some ways. So I'm also an
Okay.
author. So I have some books, and just recently I have been feeling the need to kind of put that aside. Um,
Oh,
I know a lot of
I'm
people are
surprised.
surprised. A lot of people are. But the reason is that I think it's become more of a distraction for what is going to come next for me. And I would really like our friend Kim talks about heart work, and I love
Mhm.
that term that she uses. I would really like to find some heart work. So, working for an organization that is helping people or a community in some way, something a little more direct than I was doing before, and probably a
Mhm.
smaller local company. I don't hope probably something in operations again because that's what I'm familiar with and that's what I enjoy doing. But that's all I got right now. It's still
Well,
very,
right. I think that part of this self-discovery journey, and I know some of it because Melisa and I talk, but I really think what is fascinating to me about it is her willingness to adventure through a whole bunch of different things. And, just to, this is going to tip, so let me just fix this really fast. There we go. Just to sort of that adventure of I'm going to dabble in this and dabble in that and ask people questions and meet with people. She mentioned Kim. Kim is a certified life coach, and I introduced them because that was something that was part of Melissa's journey of, is this something that I want to do? And she learned a lot from Kim. And, I think one of the things that Melissa's very much on a journey, but I think that every person who is having to earn a living is on a journey. And there's a beautiful times in your life where you can direct that journey by personal choice and by sheer will and determination. And I think that you kind of made a big bold choice in stepping out and saying, I'm going to just learn and absorb and just talk to people. I think even if you're working a full-time job and you want to know what comes next, conversations. And I think that's been the thing that you told me the most. And I'm like, I want to have more conversations. I want to understand what people are doing. And I think, it's not like I have all the answers just because I'll be doing trainings on job searching and coaching people on how to interview and what to pursue. I don't have all the answers because it's nuanced and it's personal. And your journey, I think, has been personal in that way. And, the helping people thing, it's actually, early in my recording days, I haven't recorded any men, but every single woman I've talked to, a big theme is that we want to help people and that we want to be paid to do that. We want to be valued when we do that. And how do we translate that into a career? And to your point, one of your strong suits is operations. I mean, you can sort of run a team like nobody's business and keep all the parts moving, have all the processes, and know who's doing what and who needs what. And that was actually one of the biggest reliefs of my business is I didn't have to worry about that stuff. I do miss it. I miss not worrying about that stuff. But I think taking those things and saying, okay, I've got this pile of things here that I want to do. How do I sift through this? You mentioned coming full circle, And I'm kind of curious what you mean by coming full circle on the operations bit.
Sure. So I also mentioned I am a fan of people reaching out for help. So I think it was in the spring last year I started seeing Leslie Lloyd. She is a life coach also, and she has a 6 week program. And she's an acupuncturist. She's my acupuncturist, and we're also friends. And she was like, "Why don't you try this?" And we're friends, so we had to set some boundaries up because that's important when you go into this. And she, oh my gosh, I think I cried every session. But she was one of her big messages were we all have the answers already, and but we don't always want to listen to ourselves.
Or
So
don't have the confidence to pursue.
yeah, or the
Mm-hmm.
knowledge how to, right? And
Sure.
I really took that to heart. And the full circle, sometimes I don't like to say the word regret, but do I regret not pursuing the psychology degree to get like a social work or a therapist certificate? Sometimes I do, because I think there's a lot of other things I could have done with that. But I think at the time my own mental health was in a place where I was like, how in the hell am I going to help other people? I can't even help myself. So that's why I didn't pursue it in, my early 20s. But now I'm in a place where I realize, again, I want to work with people and help them in some way. However,
Mm-hmm.
I have 3 young kids. So going back to school myself is not probably not in the picture. I got 3 kids to get through college.
Well,
um,
let's talk about that for a second
sure.
because I think, this can affect any parent, but maybe by default, mothers are more affected by having kids in terms of career trajectory. And you had mentioned earlier you took time off after you were laid off to be with your kids, and that was just a good time to really focus on running your household. And then you segued back into a career and were able to pick up into, I believe it was the operations with my company,
Hmm.
and from my perspective, it was like you didn't skip a beat in terms of the time you spent with your family. And I think the common misperception with employers is that time is somehow backtracking or losing skills. I think if anything, when you've become a mom, you've become a warrior. Like
Oh,
you
yeah.
you 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 know how to handle business, and you're not going to mess around because that's just who you've become as a mom. So, with that in mind, I know that when you're making decisions right now, that a lot of that has to do with what kind of mom are you going to be. You're not going to want to commute 2 hours to a corporate office and be at the corporate office all day, 5 days a week, and be gone 10 to 12 hours a day when you have young children. That's not your priority. Am I correct?
For me, correct. But certainly I know plenty of women who do it and they don't have any regrets about that. So I definitely feel like this is definitely not a one shoe fits all answer.
Absolutely.
And I took about a year and a half off, um, and then I was really missing work because the
Because
little people.
there is a reward to it, right?
Yeah, yeah, and being around the little people all the time was it kind of got to me a little bit.
You just want like adult conversation at some point.
Yeah.
You want to be challenged in a different way that doesn't involve diaper changing,
Yes.
things like that. I get it. So, with that in mind, um, you know, you, um, you know, we kind of connected on your job with Power 3 by chance. And now that you're kind of like, okay, I've got some time and space here to figure out what's next. And you, like you said, some women are doing that corporate job with the commute and everything. And, some are better suited for that and some don't prefer it, but feel like they have to do it for their family. There's a lot of different scenarios. Like I said, it's very personal. Where does that factor in for you and what kinds of things are you doing to pursue the work that fits with what your needs are personally?
Yeah, that's a great question. I am very careful about the jobs I apply for. And to be honest, I feel like when I apply for a job, I may as well crumble up my resume and throw it in the fire, because some of the bigger companies, I know they're getting 1,000 resumes for, positions. And I've gotten a few responses of, you've made it to the next round. Here's an interview with an AI, which I think it's great that companies have that technology to be able to weed through 1,000 applicants quickly. However, my personal goal, I don't want to work for a company that is so big that, there's not like a human looking through my stuff. That's my goal. I'm not saying that's the right answer or the wrong answer, but when I get those, I generally don't follow through because I just know
It's
not
not for you. Yeah.
it's not. I also realize I don't want to be the boss. It's funny, this is called boss moves. I'm like, I don't want to be the boss. I really enjoy supporting people with a clear vision and helping them build and hold things up. Really, I enjoy taking things off of the boss's plate so that they can continue to grow their vision into something I believe in. So I've looked at some executive assistant roles, though I don't love that title because
The connotation.
yes, and a lot of them are operations. A lot of
Yeah.
executive assistant roles are not administrative roles. They're operations roles. So I would be happy to take an executive assistant role that has operations experience. And I'm not just moving people's calendars around and things like that. Not that I mind doing
Right.
those things, but I've
That just has to be a piece of the puzzle, not like the whole gig.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I think that's good. It's the commentary on the AI interview bots. I think that's tragic because if we depersonalize employment, it I don't know. That's such a huge element of why people choose the place they choose for work and the values that they place. And companies are losing that opportunity. It's sad to hear that more and more companies are doing that. And I understand we have kick out questions that we put on our job postings, and if someone doesn't meet the minimum requirements, I get it. And as well as anyone, sifting through 100 resumes to find the top three is tough. um, Usually we can tell at a glance, and there's a surprising number of people who apply who haven't even bothered to make sure they meet the baseline requirements. So sometimes the process of elimination is very doable. But that brings up one of the things that I want to focus on in the training is how to network to find jobs, which I think that's something you're really kind of organically doing, and that right thing might happen because of a conversation you had. But then also how to stand out in that crowd, how to apply for the jobs, how to prepare your resume to speak to the job you're applying to, and how to stand out in that crowd. And I'd be curious to find out, when you're doing that, you feel like you're just crumpling up your resume and throwing it in a trash pile. Are there things that you're adjusting to try to hit that nail on the head, or try to, my big recommendation is stalking people on LinkedIn. Have you tried any of that?
I have a little bit. I think I'm still in a place where I'm trying to figure out what I want to do. There's a website called Idealist, and a lot of companies that are community facing and nonprofit post their jobs there. And I found some really good leads that way. So I think I'm being particular about the job boards that I'm connecting with. And it's funny when you leave a job and you're like, oh, we're friends outside of work. We're still gonna contact each other and keep up. And then you don't. So I actually have done that. I've reached out to some people I haven't spoken with in years, from previous positions, just to catch up and see how things are going. And it's been really great. And my purpose of doing that is not to look for work. It's just to, make that human connection with people that I used to talk to probably multiple times a week.
Is there anyone that you've talked to in this journey, this more recent adventure, that's given you your most useful advice or suggestions or input?
It's interesting. I have a friend who was also laid off, and we had coffee just last week, and we both talked about retirement's still 15 years away. So it's like, it's close, but not close, because I don't know, for many of us, 15 years may feel like a long time, but I have a almost 14-year-old son, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like, weren't you just starting your first like steps the other day? And you started kindergarten just yesterday, right? So he mentioned that there's a point in time where he was making $500,000, but he was also traveling across the world. He worked so much, he was exhausted. Wasn't with his family anymore. And he was like, I don't want that job anymore. He was like, I will be happy to make less than half of that and not be in charge of a giant team and, have a budget that size. And I don't want that much responsibility anymore. And then we also talked about what your retirement goals are, which I think for someone my age, it's something to consider when you're looking for your next job. I
Yeah.
really would love to work from home, but I also do miss some human contact. So I would like a possibility for some hybrid work. And I have always said, if you stop moving and you stop connecting with people and stop challenging your brain in some way, you're going to die. So
Yeah.
I want to do that forever. So I'd really like to find work that I can do forever. I started working with the Carroll County Literacy Council, and I have my first student. I'm very excited to start tutoring an adult. A lot of people come from other countries and can speak English really well, but they can't necessarily read or write it. And
Right.
English is tricky. It is a tough language. So that's some hard work that I'm getting into. I feel like I go off I go off on these answers and I forget the original question that you asked.
No, I think it's great. I think, when you talked about, the person that you met with for lunch,
Oh,
and you
yes.
mentioned that them not wanting to climb the ladder and manage a lot of people, I actually think that's an interesting one because if you're young and you're watching this, in my early 20s, I just, out of college, I just wanted to get a job that was a career, that had a
Yeah.
future. And then I get that and I'm like, well, I want it to pay more. So I'm like, looking for that. And I don't want an hour long commute each way. So I'm looking for that. And, and I, when I found the place that was close to home, paid well, was in what I thought was a nice career path trajectory, then I was like, okay, I want to grow. And I remember the VP of the company was OAOT, which I don't think they exist anymore, but they had the tallest building in Greenbelt. And so as a kid, I was like, I'm going to work in that building. And here I am working at the top of that building in this corporate office. And I'm thinking I'm, big shit. And so the the VP of the department, and I'm like from the CEO down, I'm like five. I'm like wait, down the chain. But she brings me in and she's like two up for me. And she's like, well, basically, what do you want to do with your career? What's your 5-year plan? And I hate the 5-year plan question because, like, I can say whatever I want to say. What does it actually mean? But in this case, I meant it. I said, I want your job.
Mm.
Turns out that's an asshole thing to say. And she punished me for the next 3 years. So she made sure I didn't get promoted and made sure to hold me to the fire as much as possible. But looking back, it was arrogant because, um, to her job did carry a lot of responsibility. She had a team of like, I want to say 12 people, which doesn't sound like a lot, but we were basically running a 5,000 person nationwide company. We also had 5 other countries outside of it. So anyhow, long story short, I do think that when you're young, you just think, oh, I want to be at the top. I want
Hmm.
to, whatever that means, I want to be there. And the truth is, management is basically paid babysitting for, and you think that people who are highly educated, highly skilled, highly paid don't need babysitting. Well, guess what? They still do. There's a lot of office politics, dynamics, harassment,
Well,
misbehavior, you
it's
know.
also like being
Um,
a conductor, right? Because you have all these people with different ways of doing the same thing sometimes. And that's definitely
mhm.
something I learned at Power 3. We have a team of, maybe 10 recruiters, and each of them have the same goal, but a lot of them do it in different ways. And they're still successful in the different ways that they do it. So, I look at it as like conducting, like, okay, your winds need to do this and your strings need to do this and percussion needs to do this. And together, you bring them all together to reach that one thing that means success.
I actually think that I like that, a conductor of people. And I think, and you're right, they're different instruments. They might play different parts. There might be the occasional solo there, whatever it is, you're kind of orchestrating this group of people. And, it's, there's, I think, amazing reward in it. And there's also a lot of, problems. The other thing that I think happens is when you stop being the one to do the doing, you're losing the skill set, especially if your skill set is technical and you're going into management. Technical doesn't have to mean computers, but it's a skill. It could be a nurse, it could be a doctor. You stop practicing the technical aspects of the role and you start managing other people. I think it actually creates some vulnerability in your career because when they downsize, you could be one of the first people to go because you're the most expensive, and they don't need you to do the everyday doing. And so you better be really good at it if you're going to go into management. And I've seen a lot of people who are in the higher levels looking for jobs because they got let go because it was easier to get rid of a few managers and have one manager. If they have 5 managers, each managing 10 people, they can narrow that to 2 and just increase their load easier than they can get rid of the people that are actually doing the work that gets them paid or something. So it's definitely an interesting thing. So with that in mind, in this discovery, you sort of realize you don't want to be top dog somewhere.
No, no,
That's
I'd
basically what you're
love to
saying.
help support a vision that someone else has and I believe in. I think that would be phenomenal. If you have like the table and the legs, type of analogy, like I want to be really strong legs for somebody.
Somebody stable. Well, yeah, and I think for you that is a strength for you. That you kind of um, keep everything going and make sure that all the things are stable and moving, doing what they need to be doing, and it's sort of I think it's a role that any company could benefit from.
Hmm.
And I think even with your background in HR and stuff like that, being in operations, there's a close relationship to that where you may not be the one to do the HR directly specifically, although you could, but you might be well versed enough in the types of things you need to question that you would question it. Where some people who have just been managers that don't have that HR slant might not pick up on things that they need to do differently or be careful about or handle a certain way when you're managing people that you would know about because of your background. So with that being said, you know um, I wanted to ask you some questions about earlier in your career because you mentioned the helping people and you mentioned your first job, which was
My very, very like high
the
school
print
job.
job, the photo job.
Yep, the 1 hour photo. Uh-huh.
Yeah. And if you were to say of those early jobs, high school, college time frame jobs, which one gave you skills that you feel have impacted your professional um, knowledge base and expertise today?
So I I worked the normal odd jobs that people tend to do during high school and college. College is also very different today. The amount of internships that they push on people is, I feel like, very different than the landscape that I navigated in the 90s. Um, I had been working I was an assistant manager for a clothing store, Gadzooks. They have since, they're not around anymore. This was, I think I was 20 at this point, and it was when I actually took a break in college. I took about a year and a half off in college, because I don't know, I didn't. Everyone else seemed to know exactly what they were doing, and I did not know. So I took a little time off. Managing is my first management role. I was 20 years old. I had to create schedules for maybe 15 people, and I managed the customers, and the other retail associates, and that was my first time. Oh, plus all the store displays and closing the register, and so it was a lot. It was a lot of work for me at 20 years old, and it was my first taste of being a manager, and I really enjoyed working with people, with hands on with some things sometimes.
So what made you not just stick with that and see where that trajectory took you? What made you decide to go back to
Oh,
college?
the hours for retail are horrible. I couldn't imagine having a family and trying to adjust my weekend and evening schedule to be with my kids. For We're a very active family. We're in a lot of stuff. So, and my husband is very busy. He travels a lot for work. He's not going to be home tonight. A perfect example, my daughter has a basketball practice. So, with
Very
he is the traveler, so I need to be able to be home, be more flexible for the kids.
right.
So that was, I also wanted to say, after that position, I left and decided to go back to school. My dad was just opening his company, and I was very fortunate enough to start working with him. I'm like going to get like emotional about this, because he's at a point where he's considering closing the company because he's approaching 80 years old. And we talked about it in length just the other day, about what, doing operations type work really. We called it an office manager. An office manager has a lot of operations responsibilities at, an office level. And that experience I had with him allowed me to finish my undergraduate degree and build my resume to get my first HR job. So very, very appreciative of those two jobs that were early
It
in
was
my
like
career.
a massive brick in the house you're building, basically.
Yeah.
To be able to
Yeah.
do that. That's really cool. And, I think if you're really doing the work, I know a lot of people are like, oh, they work for their parents. But I think, my older daughter worked for me and got a lot of experience. And, I would, I'm a little bummed that she's gone because she really, could do a lot of things both artistically and in QuickBooks, like accounting stuff. So, but I guess my point is, I think that it's still very valuable work experience, um, and from what from your reaction to it all, very meaningful that you had that experience, that you really
Oh yeah.
appreciate, what it did for you and what it has been for him, and and he's, and speaking of career trajectory, he's got a business. He's, you said approaching 80 or in his 80s. I don't know which one, but um, having to make a decision about when to end your career or sell your business or whatever and fully retire, I think is a big, big part of, the end game. And, you talk about how retirement is maybe 15 years, and we do need to be thinking about what that 15 years looks
Yeah.
like.
And I don't want to stop working. Like, like I said, I really think as you get older, if you stop moving your mind and moving your body and interacting with people, you're going to die. So, I know that's very blunt to say, but I do feel strongly about that. So I would love for these next 15 years to grow a career that I can do, very, very minimal hours a week, but continue to do it, and, forever, really, for
Yeah.
forever. So the tutoring is
Or,
very,
Or if you're at past a point where you need the financial push, if you know, for people who are fortunate enough, like my uncle, he strictly volunteers and he goes in every day for 3 to 4 hours to Casa House or Casa de Maryland. I always call it Casa House, but that's house. Casa de Maryland. He goes in and he basically does this volunteer work. And I remember sitting with him. We are actually sitting in his car, and he was like, "I'm thinking about retiring, but I don't know what I'm going to do with my life. Like I'm so used to having a regimented schedule and doing these things." And I said, "You will find something, but just don't not find something." And now he's basically got an unpaid job, and but it's hard work, as you mentioned, and I think these skills that we build could become that, even if it's not a paid job.
Yes.
But I was just telling my daughter the other day, like, I mean, I'm going to be 50 in July, and it's not lost to me that like age discrimination is a real thing. When I'm 60 and I look that much older, and people shy away from
You're
hiring
not going
older
to look a
people.
day older than you are right now, Jenny.
Bet. We'll see what happens. But no, I mean it's definitely. I mean, like I don't feel nearly 50, like I don't, but I definitely think that that awareness that if you don't have a path carved out for you by the time you're 60, is someone hiring you, knowing that you could a be at the
Oh,
top of your
no.
price range, b be preparing to just cruise control into retirement. So there's a lot of things that I think about too about this stage of your career. And I think a lot about the younger people and how they get to this stage and they think that someone at this stage has just had it made. And I feel like you're a good example of someone who's like, yeah, I had these things, but I wanted something different, and I'm still working on what that really looks like. But what I'm seeing too is like a common theme that you really like. I think you are a very good task and people manager, and that you're very good at keeping the mission afloat and moving forward. And whatever that mission is, I mean, it makes it sound very serious, but I definitely think that that's something that it sounds like throughout your career that there's that streak. But I also see the creative streak. You've got your writing. You really enjoyed the picture development, and so that's the I could. If there was a way to merge those things for you, I think that would be really neat to be able to still
Oh,
have
yeah.
that creative thing happening while you're managing. I think is really kind of would be like a perfect combo for you.
Yeah,
Um,
I
it's kind
agree.
of neat.
So I have looked at creative based actually I went to apply talking about AI kept having different feelings about it. I applied for an operations job with Stitch Fix, the
Yeah,
clothing subscription. And at the very end, it was like you have to check a box and it's supposed to send you an email to verify a code so they can tell that you're human. Because another part of getting 1,000 resumes is you get a lot of spam
yeah.
nowadays. It's not what it used to be. You get resumes that aren't even real people. Well, the email never came. So I filled out the entire application. I answered all their questions and I was like, there's no emails, not in my junk. It literally never came. So I tried to reach out to them, but to talk to a human to tell them I'm trying to apply for this job, but there's no code, I
It's
just
not
gave up.
working.
Yeah, I was
Yeah,
like, all right, I'm just giving up. I'll move on to the next thing. Um, so yeah, there's I don't know. Sometimes I look for signs, and if something is too complicated, then I'm like, maybe this is a sign I shouldn't be doing
peace
this.
out. So speaking of signs, tell us about this podcast you're going to be starting.
Oh yeah, it's just something for fun. It was a few weekends ago. My girlfriends and I have this tradition now where every November we go to our friend's condo in Ocean City, and each of us has to bring a craft. Oh, I should have brought, I don't have it with me, but each of us brings a craft and it's a surprise. Like, we're like, surprise, this is what we're doing. And mine was a trucker hat, and we did embroidery, Pura Vida on it because we're going to Costa Rica in June together. My other friends had other crafts as well. But why we're doing it, and we're just talking and sharing our stories. We're laughing so hard, and I said this should be a podcast. This is this is great. We're doing something that people want to see what we're doing, but we're also doing that thing where we were talking about important things about life and kids and husbands and politics and our bodies and all sorts of things. So my friend Jess and I are building an outline, a business plan together. It's still just for fun, but you know me, I need to be organized. I got to know what we're
She
doing.
wanted a plan for this interview.
I did. I was like, what are we doing exactly? So yeah, we're going to talk about important subjects while we craft. So we're going to be showing the craft and the process of making the craft. And I don't know if you ever watch craft videos, but they always fast forward when it's like the part where they're like, and now you sew all the way around here, and it's like boop, 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 boop. I'm like, yeah, we're gonna just talk during that time, and we're probably gonna
Please
invite
do.
people watch it.
You know what?
Hopefully you'll be one of them, Jenny.
Yeah, I mean, maybe you'll become some weird like craft cult classic podcast. I mean, it's and this is the interesting thing about what you're doing and what I like about it is you're just doing this for fun. And maybe it becomes nothing, maybe it becomes something. But you have a vision for it and you're working to execute it. And the nice thing is you have a group of people that want to join you with it. And and sometimes those things open doors and you don't know what thing and what door is going to be opened by a passion or a hobby or whatever. And she kind of downplayed her book writing because you have how many books published?
I have 6 published, and I should publish 2 more next year. But I was saying that I'm thinking of taking a step back from writing. You
Yes, but I just want to point out that those books were written while she was running operations for my business. This is
Yeah.
like a multi-talented human being right here. And so, yes, you're stepping back from the books and you're introducing something else that you're inspired by. And I think that, what that winds up being, who knows? That's kind of the neat thing about all of this is you have an opportunity to, and we all, I mean, whether you work full time or you're taking some time to figure things out or whatever your situation is, you know, you can build other things while you're stuck somewhere else,
Oh,
at
sure.
whatever place you're in. And, I started Power 3 while I was still working full time and I didn't have a lot of work to do in that time. But I set up the framework and then I took a leap,
Hmm.
and I feel like we don't know what the next 6 months looks like for you, but you're setting up some things and you have some things in motion and you're talking to people. And I think that it's really, I hope that once you've landed or sort of feel like you've solved some of your journey of where it's heading, I'd love to meet up and talk again about what the steps you took to get there and what made a difference and why this and all those things. I think that's really neat. And I will definitely be looking for the was it Craft Nasty?
Craft nasty. Yeah.
I love
Don't
just the title. Just the title. I love it.
Yeah. Don't be afraid to get weird. Like if there's something
Yeah.
you're curious about, you got this one precious life. So why not lean into it and see what happens?
I love it. I love it. And actually, that's another thing. Do stuff that's weird. I feel like I've been stuck in a structure for a long, long time. And even with my business that I have, um, for Power 3, I'm in an industry where you can be a little silly, but there's still like boundaries to that silly. And I'm like, I want to be so silly. I want to be so outside of a box. And you talk about the next 15 years. Maybe there's some freedom to be found, and maybe you inspire me in some way to do those things. But I definitely, I'm excited to see where your journey leads you, and I like that you don't have to have an answer right away. I think that if there's one theme in all of this that I would want a listener to hear is you don't have to have an answer. You don't have to have an answer just because you're 20 years into your career. You don't have to have an answer when you're 18. I think you just do and discover.
Yeah, and
And
that was actually a really hard lesson for me to learn because I do like immediate results. I'm like, well, I'm making a change. I have to have all the answers immediately. But I think being older has taught me more patience, and I still struggle with it. I certainly do.
yeah, well, I love what you're doing, and I'm
Thank you.
going to just say thank you again. for joining our Boss Moves podcast. And yeah, not, it doesn't mean you have to be a boss. Just owning your spot, knowing where you want to go. I think that's part of the discovery process and learning some ideas and inspirations along the way. And I feel like your story to me is very inspiring. So we are definitely going to catch up, maybe in a year from now or so, and just see where you're at and what you're doing, and how you got there. Because I think it's a neat journey that you're on, and I'm here for it.
Thanks. Thanks for
All right.
having
Well,
me.
you're welcome. I'm going to go ahead and end the recording.